Welcome to the Science Edit, the podcast that breaks down the trickiest parts of science and helps you get it right when it matters most. I'm Miss Lima, and I'm here to support you with the science you need when you need it. Whether you're revising for exams, exploring future careers, or just trying to figure out why your last test didn't go so well, you're in the right place. Let's dive into our next episode. Today, you'll hear directly from qualified doctors and dentists about their experiences at medical school, what it's really like to study medicine, how they handled the pressure, and what advice they'd give to anyone thinking about a medical career. We're not holding back on the questions for this episode. I'm a qualified medic. Ask me anything. Thank you so much for joining me today, everybody. Thank you. I guess the first question that's really obvious is, what first inspired you to pursue medicine?
For me, I think so first of all, from a young age, I really like biology. Biology is like one of my favourite subjects. And obviously medicine has quite a lot to do with that. So I think that was my first initial interest. And then what really secured it for me was doing work experience in year 12. I've shadowed a doctor and that really just inspired me to apply to medical school. And then, now I'm a first year medic.
It's quite a specialised branch of biology though, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say it was like the specific parts of biology, learning about the kidney, human anatomy, all of that really inspired me.
I mean, those are definitely some of the modules where there's greater scope in the course. You study to talk about human disease and the effect of dysfunction of those systems, isn't it? So you can, see the obvious parallels to medicine there.
Yep.
And how about our other medical colleague who's joined us?
Hello. So I wanted to be a teacher at school.
Oh dear.
And yeah, exactly. My teachers were like, don't be a teacher. And I had a very good biology teacher and good friends that were also going towards, they pushed me towards the medicine pathway and we all got in, and I love science. There was a specific area of medicine I did want to go into even before I'd applied. I read a book by Dr. Richard Shepherd called Unnatural Causes.
I love that book.
I was like, yes, chopping up dead bodies. That is what I want to do.
It's
You're going to edit that out, aren't you?
No, it's a really interesting book, actually.
So just for those who aren't familiar with it, could you just give us a sort of brief summary of what it's about?
So Dr. Richard Shepherd is a forensic pathologist. So pathology is about the study of cells in disease. And pathology itself involves a lot of microscopes, and you also do autopsies in that. Now, forensic pathology is a sub-speciality in that, where you specifically work with the police. You're doing forensic autopsies, which are a lot longer than a normal autopsy. A normal autopsy basically involves opening the chest, taking out the organs, weighing them, having a look at the organs. A forensic one is layer by layer. And it takes a lot longer.
Fascinating. So, I mean, something that's potentially going to take you all around the country, I imagine, to deal with different cases?
Yeah, there's not many forensic pathologists, and you have to be happy with lots of travelling.
Yes,
and I like travelling, so.
Nice.
Obviously, you have all your exams and all of that pressure that you go through, and then you finally get to medical school. What were your experiences like there?
I would say I really enjoyed my first year of medical school. Obviously, there is the exam side of it, which is quite stressful. Exam season is never fun. But I just found first year to be really interesting. I went in thinking that I would have no free time whatsoever. I thought I'd be in the library day and night. But it's all about work-life balance, I'd say. And just balancing that, it's just made first year really enjoyable.
The cohort, are the other medics on your course, they tend to be quite close, don't they?
Yeah, the people in my course are in the same level of closeness as sixth formers, just because it's around the same numbers, and because we all have to work together a lot, we have to get to know each other like that. So I'd say we're all really close, and we all help each other during exam season, which is really nice.
And what sort of range of different classroom sort of content or talk content have you had at university? Because obviously with medicine, it's a vocational course. It's not all just sitting in lecture halls.
So obviously we do have lectures, but then we have small group teaching. So that's in groups of 10 or 12, which is really nice because we have a tutor with us. So it's kind of like a classroom kind of feel. And then we have seminars and then practicals, which are all really helpful.
For me, I came into medical school first year of COVID, and unlike other medical schools, I was actually allowed to go into the hospitals pretty much immediately. And year one is different at the school I went to. There was not much structure in terms of the course, but there was lots of sociology, a bit of orthopedics, rheumatology. It only came later in the second years onwards, where there'd be 4 modules a year. They'd break it down into 4 weeks of lectures and then 4 weeks of hospital-based work. And within that, you've got some GP stuff, you've got some anatomy, and in the hospital itself, as you progress throughout the years, you get more and more responsibility. But you do have to push yourself and say, I'd like to do bloods, or I'd like to do a cannula.
Okay, so there's a bit of scope for you expressing a preference for different specialisms.
You can go out your way. They do encourage you to go out your way and look into the things that you're interested in. For example, at my uni, they didn't put on autopsies for show for everyone. I had to contact the pathologist myself, go in and see those.
Okay, yeah.
Actually, the only real experience you get of dead bodies at my uni was the anatomy lab, where they do dissections, but they cover the face, they cover parts. So yeah, it was a big change, I think, when I went to see a dead body.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the anatomy is something that, is very different as a teaching experience at school compared to university. So did you do dissections yourself, or did you look at prosected specimens?
50-50, really. You'd go into the anatomy department, you'd be split into your groups, you'd have a body in front of you that was donated, and you'd have at it, and you'd be able to dissect and experiment and take apart and try and figure it all out. And then you'd be given prosections where the professors would talk through what is this and what the anatomy is. Everyone thinks, got to remember this connection, this muscle group or whatever. That's not the point of anatomy. It's not a memorization game. What you have to do is link the anatomy to the clinical picture. That is why you learn anatomy.
I mean, I think that's a really good point, because I think sometimes that gets lost, doesn't it, in between memorising your branches of the cranial nerve, etc.
Definitely. I think that's the mistake, at least I made at the start of going into med school, was thinking it's going to be like GCSE and A-level. I can just memorise everything for the exams and regurgitate it. There is so much stuff that you cannot memorise it anymore. It's all about pattern recognition and using the knowledge to really think about what's put in front of you, because you're not going to know everything, but they teach you the skills to figure it out in the moment. You may not have come across this disease or this process, but you can, first principles, go back and say, well, because of this is going to happen.
How do you cope with that sheer level of volume of stuff that you have to deal with? There's a lot of stress there.
Yeah, it's I think coming from secondary school, where you're in a group of people that are sort of top of the class, and then you go to medical school, and then you're sort of, average, and
everyone got in there on merit,
But you go from, because you're surrounded by other people that are just the best of the best, you always feel like you're not good enough. But it's not normal to be surrounded by people that are like that good all the time. Do you know what I mean? So it can feel really demoralizing when you don't do as well as everyone else. But you probably have to remember that you're here for you, and you can only do the best you can. It was tricky at the start, but once you realise that, you got to prove it to yourself, not anyone else, that's when it got easier.
Would you say the first year exams are kind of the toughest, because it's kind of that step?
I mean, I find mine really difficult, so if it is the hardest, it'll be nice. But I wouldn't say it was that hard. Like, obviously, finding out the best study method for me and regulating with the amount of content that there was, it was difficult to cope with at first. I think the main thing to realise is you can't memorise everything. I think that's what I tried to do in the beginning. I tried to memorize everything, which is what I did for A-level and GCSEs. It's just knowing to have those links and just going back to trying to figure it out, but work it through instead of memorizing just all the content that there is.
How do you think that compares with dentistry as a subject?
I mean, I think some of the points that were made about principles of problem solving is really valid. I mean, one of the big differences between university and A-level is the nature of the examination. So you'll probably have, I would have thought, had some OSCEs and that sort of thing, where you're going around different stations, having to deal with actors, and that's obviously something you don't experience at A-level at all. Yeah,
I think from memory, OSCEs stand for Objective Structural Clinical Examinations.
I'm glad you explained that one. I'm glad you explained that.
And so how exams work is, at least in my university, there was your written exams, which normally consist of your multiple choice. We had 2 over 2 days, each 100 questions each. You get 2 hours to do them. And then the OSCEs, which are 8-minute stations. You go in, say, do a cardiovascular examination, interpret the ECG, you go to the next one, you're then doing a knee examination, you're interpreting the x-ray, that sort of thing. It's
very difficult to sort of stay focused if perhaps one doesn't go exactly according to plan, isn't it, to ensure it doesn't throw you for the rest of them
exactly
early on. But really good experience. Obviously quite artificial, of course.
I've got a personal question to ask you. Was there a moment where you actually thought, yes, this is definitely for me? Would you be able to share that with us?
See, I think if I had placements, because first year we don't get placements that much. I feel like placements is the time that you feel that. But during one of my online GP placements, which is one of the only placements I had, obviously speaking to the patients and interacting with them, it kind of gave you a glimpse of being a doctor.
Yeah.
So then having that kind of glimpse into the future kind of thing really did inspire, like, it really just motivates you to like see what the end goal is and just work towards that.
So you can see yourself in their shoes in a few years' time.
Yeah,
sort of thing,
exactly.
yeah.
And like getting advice from the GP that's present with us, it's just really nice to know what the future holds.
I
Brilliant.
think because my pathway is dealing with people that don't speak back to you, my experiences of patients hasn't necessarily like enthused me about the job very much. But despite saying that, I had some experience in A&E where the professor there, brilliant, funny guy, basically let me go take histories, do examinations, and then come back and report. And there was one patient who had every organ was failing. It was all going wrong for him. And they were saying, oh, maybe it's a heart attack, but the ECG shows no changes. And there's maybe a high CK, so maybe it could be a kidney thing. Anyway, I turned around and all these doctors trying to figure it out. And I turned around and said, well, maybe the ECG is just a bit iffy and the CK could be high because he's having a heart attack. And they were like, whoa, that's a good suggestion. And the professor turned around and said, that would be 10 more marks in your exams. And I was like, okay. And then I said something else later, something else. And he said, that's another 5 marks. So I think it's not necessarily what I've done. You can get some great teachers that really encourage you, despite you being completely wrong about things. They don't put you off. And I've had that with pathology teachers, with clinical A&E teachers, and I think it's the quality of the teaching that helped me.
That's actually really interesting that you said that, because my next question was going to be about personal qualities. I mean, in terms of people that want to apply for medicine, what personal qualities do you think are important?
I think being very resilient is a really big thing for applying for medical school, just because there are so many setbacks at times, and applying to med school isn't the most easiest thing. Just not having any doubts and having the self-confidence is really important to applying. Other than that, actual qualities of becoming a med student, having that hard work, that passion, the focus and determination will really drive you through like the application process, but then also throughout the 5 years of med school.
I would say this is a question you'll get asked in your interviews. And the key thing is not to list a bunch of adjectives, it's to actually say, here's an adjective, and this is a time that I showed that. If you go to an interview, everyone can say, I'm determined, I'm passionate. You have to prove to them that you are. Give a story. And they like it in interviews where you say what you learned from that experience and what you did differently next time, because that is actually one of the most important things about being a doctor, is you have to reflect. And you have set times throughout the years in being a doctor where you literally have to spend hours being interviewed by someone, listing the cases, say what you've learnt from them.
So what would you say to a year 11 or 12 student who's thinking about applying but isn't sure if they're good enough?
Yeah, you have 4 places on your UCAS application for medical school, right? And then there's a 5th, which is the backup. So again, be realistic. You don't have as many choices as you would another degree. Do the research, see what universities take or what they prioritize. They might prioritize A-level grades, they might prioritize UCAT, that sort of thing.
Speaking to people like you as well, trying to get, just having advice from people as well would be good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's super important, because obviously plenty of prospective medical students have family, friends, etc., who are doctors, but it's not a universal thing by any means. And often students like yourselves coming back to the school to talk about their experiences is one of the few points of access when people can talk directly to people in medicine.
Maybe I'll say that everyone that goes to these interviews is an A-star student.
Yeah.
The thing that differentiates the people is their ability to communicate.
Yeah.
So you may be the smartest person in the room, but if you can't get on with someone, if you can't communicate your knowledge and explain it in a way that makes sense to people that have no idea about anything you're talking about.
But that's something you can practice, isn't it?
Yeah, but I do think you've either got it or you don't, to be honest.
Fine.
Yeah, I would say that I applied to medical school with like no hope of me actually getting in, just because I was very...
Sorry, I can't believe I just heard that.
No,
You're
I'm
an amazing student.
It's because when you see all the other med applications, people with 4 A-stars, 2 years of work, like so many things, and you just feel, because the constant comparison, it really does put you down. So obviously I was very worried if I would get in or not. But yeah, my main thing is it doesn't hurt to try, because at the end of the day, I got 2 offers from medical school, and that's something I never would have imagined. It is all about the communication. I feel like in interviews and stuff, even though you could be saying the fanciest words and saying all these technical terms, if they see that passion in you, if they see that determination, that actual focus and hard work, then they do, because they're looking for qualities of a doctor, not of just a medical student. And I think that's really important to put across in interviews.
That's actually a really good point. I think there are some things that you can learn, but actually there are other aspects that just come from you as, you know, the type of person that you are.
Yeah,
I've got some questions for final thoughts here. The first one is, has becoming a doctor lived up to what you hoped it would be?
For me, obviously, I'm not a qualified doctor yet, but as a first-year med student, I would say it has, in terms of the hard work. No med student will ever lie about how hard and difficult the work of medical school is. But what I would say is it hasn't overtaken my life in a bad way. I'd say that I find all the lectures really interesting, and if I am studying, I do find it enjoyable. And also I do have time for myself, which is what I think a lot of students are worried about, having like no social life.
Were you worried it was going to change you as such?
Yeah, I thought I would have no personality except from like textbooks, but I really do feel like I have that good balance of social life as well as studying.
I know we obviously talked about the importance of work-life balance earlier. Is there anything that you've got involved with extracurricular at university that you feel you perhaps wouldn't have considered before in terms of clubs or societies?
Yeah, so I am a part of a few societies, and in med school we have a thing called the Teddy Bear Society. I know it sounds a bit weird, but basically we go to like primary schools every week, like every Wednesday. It's just like basic things like teaching primary school kids how to brush their teeth properly, that kind of thing. But like having that time, and there's so much other different societies I know. I know some of my med friends are dancers, some of them do like sports, and there are specific societies. There is a medics netball, medics football, so it can be more altered to like our study schedule kind of thing, so it won't completely overtake our lives.
I think going to medical school itself, you've got all the learning part of it, but also I have made a lot of good friends. I did find the time to make a hour-and-a-half long movie with about 30 other students.
Wow.
Some scenes were fight scenes between 2 students, and I had to film them in a way where, because they're not in the same room, because they're in a lecture or whatever, clever editing had to be used.
Yeah. Okay, so lastly, if you had to sum up your journey in a sentence or 2, what would you say?
I would say it's a very difficult journey, but with a very rewarding end, with like obviously the reward of becoming a doctor.
So lastly, what keeps you motivated in this career?
I think for me is just knowing how hard I worked in sixth form, because this has been a long journey, like how hard I worked since GCSEs throughout sixth form, and just knowing I worked hard for it. I really try and keep that in mind. And also I just focus on the end goal, which is becoming a doctor, which is one of my passions.
Yeah.
So having that as like my only goal is really important, so I could like drive to that.
Just one quote, which is, "You haven't come this far just to come this far."
Exactly, yeah.
No, I like that. I think it's very short and sweet, really.
Well, thank you very much for joining us for this behind the scenes look at life as a qualified doctor. We hope it's given you a real insight into the highs, the challenges and the decisions involved in choosing medicine as a career. If you have any comments on this episode or have ideas for a future episode, please drop us an email at comment@thescienceedit.com. Until next time, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.